Welcome to the Philantrepreneur Show, hosted by Dr. Victoria Boyd, designed to offer tips, strategies, and insight to empower nonprofits and entrepreneurs with sustainable win-win solutions. The Philantrepreneur Show is sponsored by the Philantrepreneur Foundation, building capacity through education and professional services.
Well, good morning. This is Dr. Victoria Boyd, President and founder of the Philantrepreneur and its foundation and editor of the Philantrepreneur Journal, and my great co-host, Heidi Anderson, founder of the Foundation to Foster Empowerment and Credit Cares, and president of Electronic Commerce International. We are thrilled to bring tips, strategies, and insight for the business and nonprofit sectors. Well, we kicked off the new year talking about social enterprise, and over the last month or so, I've always been researching and interested in it, and because it is a portion of the Philantrepreneur model, and, you know, we're grounded in social enterprise philosophy. So, therefore, we want to offer as many strategies for business and nonprofits to understand the concept, but also move toward implementation. So I have some exciting announcements, I guess. First, if you remember, our first guest of the new year was Jean Block. She was really delightful and supercharged guest with so much to share on social enterprise, and she's just a wealth of knowledge. And she has agreed to join us each quarter as a regular feature to provide tips, updates, concepts, and strategies on the whole social enterprise philosophy and some ways to implement it, and all of its related topics. So it's going to be a real growing experience and valuable as we go through the year, bringing on and talking about just what are the concepts of social enterprise. So it might include some market research, feasibility studies, or how to start the conversation in your organization on change. So this is really exciting, and you won't want to miss any of those shows. So just remember, they're going to be the first Wednesday of each quarter. So the next one will be in April, and then so on through the year. So I'm just really excited that she's agreed to come on, and I look forward to all of her insight and contributions. And so I know, Heidi, you were really intrigued when we had Gina on the show and thought about how she could implement strategies to benefit the foundation to foster empowerment. You know, so with that, Heidi, how you doing this morning? You were in Super Bowl Central this past weekend. We commented on the highly unusual fog in that area. Give us updates on your foundation and any other topics for our listeners.
Oh, yeah, we did have some really strange weather for Phoenix for Super Bowl Sunday. I honestly have never seen fog like that here in 8 years of living here. And I guess we figured, since everybody was saying that Super Bowl 49 should have been held in San Francisco, we would just make Phoenix feel as much like San Francisco as possible. But good news is, much like San Francisco, by afternoon the fog was gone and it was sunny and 70 degrees. Actually, it's going to be like 78 today. So, but enough of the weather report. But yeah, it's gorgeous. There's many things going on with the Foundation to Foster Empowerment, but it's a very capital-intensive project. It's taking some time, so it's a lot of. I wish I had more big news to announce, and I think I will by our next show. But Victoria, did I understand you have a couple more announcements?
I could probably, if you could see me, I could be bouncing around with just all the excitement. I'm still really excited about Michael Drew joining us on March 4th and getting ready for the spring edition of the Journal. Well, he will be featured. The concept of his book, Pendulum, has a direct alignment with the importance and power of social enterprise and its application in the marketing world, and even just how organizations function. But let's get to today's show and welcome Patrick Hibbard of Social Enterprise Ventures and Patrick Hibbard Consulting. He's one of a growing cadre of young professionals that are researching and finding the importance of connecting the competencies of the private sector in the nonprofit world. We had a really great and productive conference call a couple of weeks ago where I learned a little about your cross-sector work. So, Patrick, welcome to the show, and please tell us more about your background and how you really got interested in this area of development.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Heidi and Victoria. I really appreciate your being on your show, and I appreciate everything you do. And you're right, we did have an amazing conversation a couple of weeks ago. Personally, my undergrad is in entrepreneurial studies from UNM's Business School, Anderson. And back then, my primary interests were centered on startups and entrepreneurial activities, combining resources in unique ways to create value, that sort of thing. And in the summer of 2012, I formed a small venture. I bought clothes from local thrift stores that they were rotating off of their floor and sold them for $1. That was sort of my gimmick. Like everything was $1. And my primary distribution method was at the local flea market. And I ran into this phenomenon that sort of changed my perception of the marketplace and of entrepreneurial activities, where the consumers that we had there, they consistently viewed other clothing items at the flea market as having a higher value simply because they were priced higher. The same items, the same conditions, but at a higher price. And, the phenomenon elicited an adverse reaction to the misperception of value and sort of this idea that simply because something costs more that it's of higher value. But also, more to the point, what it did for me is it made me question why it was so important to me to keep things at $1. And of course, for one thing, the price point was based off of my costs. It wasn't the what the market will bear pricing strategy I was working on. It was cost plus. And even at that, my gross margin was in the high 80s, almost 90%.
Wow.
Yeah, but of course you're looking at $1 per item, so that's 87 cents. Right. So obviously I have to work on volume, but that's fine. And really it was sort of an experiment, to see what I could do with this activity. But also I started to look at some of the other impacts that the venture itself was having, right? By having less expensive items that people need, and the demographic at the flea market is obviously the sort of the lower socioeconomic status folks, and what was happening by having lower priced items, then they were made implicitly more wealthy to feed their kids, or to do these, to provide for these other activities. And so there was actually, without my knowing it, I didn't plan the business around this. There was a positive social impact, and so that intrigued me, and it intrigued me to think that through business activities and through entrepreneurial activities, we can cause change in a positive way. We can actually start to solve problems through the activities that we are involved in the marketplace, in how we view them. And so from there, my MBA studies were centered around this idea of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. The technical concentrations are international management and policy and planning. And last summer, I was blessed with the opportunity to intern with the Social Entrepreneur Corps in Guatemala, doing some of the similar activity of what I just described, setting up entrepreneurs in the community to sell high impact items like water filters. They have big problems with water quality in Central America and most of Latin America. And so rather than just giving away the product, or the other end of the spectrum, just leaving people to their own devices. I mean, there's children that are dying from the effects of this poisoned water. Somewhere in the middle, you can provide through market activity, through the entrepreneurial model, you can provide the items by having the people themselves set up entrepreneurial activities and simply providing them with sort of the innovation that the social entrepreneur core came up with, and Greg Van Kirk, he's at Columbia University, is the micro-consignment model, where rather than microfinancing, where the entrepreneur is indebted to the lender, which has actually had some unfortunate effects in Latin America. It's not as successful there as it has been in Asia. But rather than getting the person into debt, what it does is it trains them, it sets them up with the products, and then they pay for whatever they sell. Whatever they don't sell comes back. So that way they're not indebted, they're holding the funds. Anyways,
like
consignment. Yeah, exactly. And so I came back from that trip and had the amazing opportunity of working with Gene Block, who is a guest on your program, and as you just mentioned, will be a regular guest. One of my favorite people on the planet. Yeah. But I worked with her last year. We did some effectiveness studies on the social enterprise training that she does. I did training as far as what the training is, what it looks like, how I can actually add some of my core competencies into the mix to make it, to bring it to, even make it even more effective. And currently I moved to Gainesville, Florida, and I'm working on expanding the social enterprise ventures training model throughout the southeastern region of the United States.
Okay. Well, we thought it'd be fun just to give some background, a little history lesson on what the term of social enterprise is, because there might be some listeners who haven't really heard that term. And so the little background here, the idea of social enterprise has a long history dating back to the 1800s. Around the world, although by different names. Moving forward, the first use of the term social enterprise can be traced to Beechwood College in Leeds, England, around 1978. Social enterprise first appeared in the U.S. around 1983. It carries a history of misconception and alignment, with many thinking it means a not-for-profit. However, social enterprise is more aligned with strategy versus a particular corporate structure. That also may contribute to the slow rise of understanding its benefits. Companies can be identified and documented using these strategies as far back as the 1800s. However, using the concept as the foundation and core of business practices was not the emphasis. It was a side effect of other activities. Kind of like you're talking about with what you did with the clothes, getting them, it's kind of like it was more of a side effect, right? So it's kind of a similar story. Yeah, so in the U.S. during the mid-1980s, the first social enterprise conference was held for the business sector, and papers then emerged on social enterprise for nonprofits. However, it never really took hold as strong and viable model. Now there seems to be a re-emergence of its value, so I know we'll be talking about how nonprofits benefit from it, but because, Patrick, you've also experienced developing a business platform, let's talk about first how the private sector benefits. This will be quite valuable to our entrepreneur listeners.
As far as the benefits in the private sector, it sort of depends on the DNA of the particular business. In generally speaking, let's start with this. Deloitte did some research recently into business school graduates and sort of what they're looking for in their future jobs. In a high proportion, I can't remember the exact number, I saw it in an article recently, but a high proportion of respondents said that they wanted to make a difference. And this is from business schools, right? This is not just generally in college. I mean, a lot of people that are idealistic tend to go to college. But business school graduates tend to be a bit more pragmatic. I want to, provide for my family. I want to, conquer the world, little stuff like that. And so what they, and with this finding, there has been quite a few studies on sort of the efficacy of looking at social impact and environmental impact and the triple bottom line design in the private sector, and the results are all across the spectrum. There's been studies that say that there's no benefits, there's no value to be derived from the second and third bottom lines, particularly when measured against the first bottom line. There's other studies that have shown that there has been an increase in value, in particular in long-term value. As you mentioned, from the 80s to now, there hasn't been a lot of activity, so we don't really have any longitudinal studies as far as long-term shareholder value of these companies. But in whatever the results of those studies are, every single company is populated by people, right? And their management is populated by people from business schools who are, according to the most recent study from Deloitte, by and large, somewhat idealistic in what their company actually does socially and environmentally. And these things matter to the next generation of managers and idea thought leaders in the community. So the bare bones value, right, on the top bottom line of any company is going to be based upon the quality of activity of their employees. That's their number one resource. So there's value in them saying we also care, whether they do or not. I'm not convinced that Walmart cares about their social impact, but they do have a measurement and they do at least talk about it. And so what they're one thing that they're trying to do is to attract the right leaders who are going to move them into the next generation, because this is the next generation of leaders. So I would say the primary benefit, at least at this point, until we have some more longitudinal studies on the long-term effects of incorporating social impact and environmental impact into the core strategies of the organization, which we don't have yet. But right now we can say 100% you will get better employees if you were concerned with social and environmental issues. Simple as that.
I mean, that's a big benefit to if you have the right people on the bus, as they say, the right team, rather than that's half the battle. You did mention about your trip to Guatemala and helping them start businesses. Is there anything else you want to expound upon that with them as entrepreneurs?
I think that it's an interesting dynamic. I think that one of the benefits of traveling internationally is getting to know my community better by visiting other communities and doing that sort of comparative analysis. And in Guatemala and Latin America, by and large, is very entrepreneurial. They're just not they're not very well equipped for scale. The larger corporations do have some traction in Latin America, especially American companies, but by and large, their distribution networks are small mom and pop stores, and it's just populated by this whole. The community dynamic is that for every few blocks you're going to have the tiendita that you go to, and that's the one that you go to because that's where you live. You don't go a couple of miles down the road to Target or to Walmart or something like we do. And so it's interesting to see some of the value that they derive from that, and also to see, like in the helping the entrepreneurs in the communities to establish these relationships where they can provide these products. What we're finding is this is also a methodology for incorporating education into these activities. So if you're going to sell these water filters in communities in rural communities in Guatemala, then the entrepreneur that we're setting up, one of the trainings is how to communicate the value of the product. And the value of this particular product is that your kids won't have diarrhea and they won't get sick and potentially, have harmful effects, or like not only the illness, but there's a lot of childhood deaths in Latin America because of this. And bringing that information, what it is, it's sort of it's a leverage point to get information into the community, because sometimes just the education piece can be very difficult, So I truly believe in the idea of sort of Trojan horsing knowledge, and we'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk specifically about social enterprise. But I also it sort of paralleled my experience in some of what Heidi was speaking of the history of social enterprise and social entrepreneurship. Is it just it turns out that there are these side effects, and we can actually use those to leverage change by using the system that's already there. And unfortunately, a good piece of a good portion of the people in the social sector are very adverse to the term business or to the term business practices. And I've actually run into some pushback when I start talking about business practices and how they would make nonprofits more efficient. And so I'm learning to temper that language a little bit.
Well, but it's important language, and that's an important comment. Like you said, I love your idea of the Trojan horse. It's kind of like bringing it and looking like something else, and they'll accidentally learn something.
Yeah.
So what lessons can nonprofits learn from the private sector?
Well, so let's take there's a few pieces of the trainings that I do that I find extremely important for the nonprofits, and in a way we actually this is a Trojan horse in and of itself. The primary training of social enterprise ventures is social enterprise for the nonprofit figuring out a way to earn income and diversify their revenue strategy. And so there's a lot that goes into that. It's a pretty comprehensive training package. And, there's the asset inventories of the organization and sort of the resource-based view, looking inward and seeing what you do well, what your assets are as far as, actual properties and physical assets, what your conceptual assets are, your core competencies. Do you have some distinct competencies that, you may be able to leverage? And especially looking at, a couple of key factors. One, when in the nonprofit sector, we have to be very careful to stay mission focused. It's, obviously a big issue in the social sector. But also we have to look at the fact that the efficiency of these assets may not be fully realized, or the efficiency isn't there so that the full capacity of these assets isn't realized. So, working with Meals on Wheels that has a kitchen that they use, and they provide a wonderful service for the community, for those that need meals in their homes, that they can't, cook for themselves. But this kitchen is used 30 to 40 hours a week. Obviously, there's more hours in the week than 30 to 40 hours, and there's big potential for earned income there. So we start with that, and there's also a lot of the conceptual dynamic of what the nonprofit does, and we start to break it apart to show them how what they do actually looks like rocket science to somebody else. If you're not familiar with volunteer management and how to motivate people without a paycheck to dangle in front of them, if people that really know how to do that are just phenomenal. Like I have an amazing amount of respect for people who are really good at volunteer management, because generally in the United States, if you're not paying somebody, they're just not going to work very well. It's just the way it is. And in particular, what I think that the nonprofits can really learn from the private sector is a shift that happened probably, we'll say 20 to 30 years ago in the private sector, is the shift from a product-centric business model, where I'm going to make a product that I think will probably gain traction in the market, and then I'm going to figure out how to sell it. And that was the traditional model, and that's how we ended up with, such amazing promotional strategies and how to actually get people to buy your product that you already made, that you already produced. In the probably about 30 years ago, in the 80s into the 90s, the shift went to the customer-centered business model, where we figure out the needs in the community. What is the market lacking? And there's, obviously a lot of sophisticated methods for doing this, but it primarily involves communication. And you figure out what is needed in the market, and then we fill that need, rather than the other way around, where if you build it, they will come. Unfortunately, it hasn't. Most nonprofits are not pulled into the marketplace. They're generally pushed. Right, and that's sort of the difference. Are you pushing your product, or is it pulled into the marketplace by a need that's there? And in the nonprofit sector, I mean, there are some obvious intuitive needs for people to be housed and clothed and fed, and underrepresented people, and we need advocacy. And there are sort of generally speaking, there are some of these topics that just we need to cover. And I'm really glad that there are people that see these needs. They see these and they fill them. But from that point, it becomes a push business model, where they simply say, we need to shelter people, so we're going to build this shelter. This is how we're going to do it. And it starts to become this product-centered business model where they push their product, or essentially their service, whatever it is for that nonprofit, and that's their solution. And there's not a lot of communication to what the market actually needs and what the market will bear. And so applying the customer-centric business model would be to say, like, here's the gaps that we have. We have homeless people here in Gainesville. So how do we figure out how to, first, how to work on the relief portion of social sector work, where we get, make sure that people don't freeze. Well, not a lot of people are freezing in Gainesville, but make sure that they're not,
or in Phoenix.
That they're not, right. But, how do we make sure people are housed, in, especially in emergency cases, people that are, have medical issues or mental health issues and stuff like that? How do we address these safety issues? And then how do we actually, the market research piece that I think nonprofits can really learn from is the development side of the social sector. So, the relief work is we have these emergencies and we need to make sure people aren't dying or people aren't, being harmed. That's the relief side of it. The development side is how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? How do I work myself out of a job, right? Most nonprofits, most nonprofits' goals are, if I'm a homeless shelter or if I'm a homeless charity, then my job is to work myself out of a job. And that's
right.
the
I tell a lot of my nonprofits. I'm going to have to start speeding this up because we have a lot of other questions we want to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think nonprofits, you gave them so much information, they're overwhelmed right now, almost me. But they can gain so much, and I love that you say you have to start thinking not about me, and I said it's not all about you, it's all about them. Who are you serving? Who are your donors? What do they need? And then you position your story, your message, and your mission to show them the benefits of what they will gain based on what you do. And so it's that Trojan horse concept again, that serve their needs to basically be self-serving. So it's really, taking it from and changing their mindset of, we're a charity, but we're here to benefit the community and you will benefit from it. So great concept there. Very briefly, just what lessons are businesses learning from the social sector? I think you sort of touched on it earlier.
Yeah, we definitely touched on it as far as the value that's derived through kind of keeping an eye on social issues for businesses. But the private sector is definitely figuring out that not only are the employees, but their customers also pay attention to these issues, and understanding that being able to position a positive social impact in your promotional strategy is just providing it's creating value for the businesses themselves, and they're also finding like keeping their employees interested, keeping the company sort of the company lively and having that motivational piece where an employee is extremely loyal to you as a company. When you have a heart, you have a soul that is associated with the social sector, then that company itself actually ends up, it has sort of a more robust human resources model, and you have and you have the motivation. If you can get people to buy into your mission and into your activities on the level of thinking that what you do every day has a positive social impact, then those are the loyal employees that will go to hell and back for you.
It will be really interesting because I think you will enjoy Michael Drew when he's on the show, because the whole concept of the we cycle, which we are dead in the center of right now, these pendulum and cycles that we go through, is totally grounded in community employees, the culture, and how you're pleasing them and getting them motivated. Wow, yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned all that, because it's a direct alignment to the cycle that we're in now, and that's why the emergence of social enterprise has really, started to take notice, or at least growing in certain sectors. I'm excited, for real. We're going to take a quick commercial break right now and be back with Patrick in just a moment.
Hey, are you a small business owner like me who wants to make a charitable contribution and needs easy access to charitable giving sources that you can automate for your business for free? Then I invite you to visit www.credit-cares.com. They have charitable giving options using their innovative merchant platform that helps nonprofits raise money and helps merchants make contributions at no additional cost to them using the products and services of Electronic Commerce International. Our giving options are easy to set up for small business. So if you have a business entity, we can donate in your business name. Go to www.credit-cares.com and see how you can make a difference every day by doing what you already do. Go to www.credit-cares.com and fill out the form, or call 855-782-2737 for more information on how your business can be a difference maker in your community.
Okay, we're back with the Philantrepreneur Show tip. As usual, I always try to give some insight, strategy, or just a tip on what's happening in the world. There has been some talk recently about the value of a business plan. I come across it on a constant basis. Some trying to cite those successful companies that claim they didn't have one. But it's not the plan itself that really dictates success. It is the process. Me being a former dancer, it wasn't about the performance, it's about the choreography, it's about the process of creating it. I know that this popped into my mind, but the process relates to good and bad habits, properly applied over a long term, not a sudden burst. And people who cite the misuse of the business plan document as an argument against good planning are using the same faulty logic as people who cite starvation diets and running a marathon without training as arguments against nutrition and regular exercise. In all three cases, what works in the long term is the long-term consistency instead of short-term bursts. Good business planning is like regular exercise, not like running a marathon all at once. We'll take another commercial break.
The Philantrepreneur is dedicated to your success. Visit thephilantrepreneur.com to find and explore a wide range of services and resources. Register and receive benefits such as training, early bird discounts, and the Philantrepreneur Journal, a nationally distributed bi-monthly digital publication serving everything Philantrepreneur, filled with tips, strategies, and resources to support your goals. Need more marketing exposure and have community impact? The Philantrepreneur is proud to offer Ads for a Cause, where 10% of your marketing purchase goes directly to charity. Contact us today to place your ad. Increase your reach in a professional digital publication or radio spot. It's a great marketing tool to send, post, or share in a variety of formats. Deadlines are on a rolling basis, so don't miss being included in the next publication. Visit thephilantrepreneur.com and click the Journal Marketing Ads tab today. Mention this show and get a 10% discount. www.thephilantrepreneur.com.
Okay, welcome back as we continue our conversation with our guest today, Patrick Hibbard, Senior Consultant at Social Enterprise Ventures. Okay, how does social enterprise and strategy training help nonprofits fulfill their mission?
Well, there's obviously the first piece is the flash of what we do, which is we help nonprofits earn money, and that's the attraction that our trainings have. Obviously, is there's a return on investment. Pay this much for the training. This is how much you're going to get back. Of course, depending on the venture and on scaling and so forth. But that's the primary purpose, or at least the explicit purpose of our trainings, is to help nonprofits to fund their missions. You talk with anybody in any nonprofit anywhere in the world, and they're probably sick of fundraising. It's most executive directors that I know and that I've worked with are they don't like fundraising. People get into the social sector because they believe in these causes. They don't get into the social sector to make money. That's for sure. So having to think about and to deal with that particular issue gets it's pretty thorny for most people in the social sector. Some are extremely good at it. Don't get me wrong, and actually some are that's their passion. So it's not only the funding of the nonprofit and the funding of what they do, of their missions, but there's the information inside the Trojan horse. The example we talked about earlier, as far as communicating with the community, with the marketplace, and getting an understanding, through our training, the organization itself, the team that is doing the training actually goes out into the community and does market research. If we had this, if we offered this product or this service, would you be interested? Very simple market research, primary market research. But what it does is it opens the lines of communication, and it shows it creates a new method for that nonprofit to be in touch with the community around them. And that's actually something that I find kind of lacking in the nonprofit community. There are, like I said, there are exceptions. There are a lot of people that are really good at being in touch with the community, but there are a fair portion of organizations in the social sector tend to sort of isolate themselves in their activities and treat pretty much everything as a zero-sum game. One of the most difficult times I've had in working with nonprofits has actually been on building alliances and dealing with these ideas of collective impact, and how do we with some obvious mission crossover in the social sector, how do we join efforts so that we can have a bigger impact together than we would have separately? And it's been extremely difficult to get multiple organizations on board with this. So when we talk about dealing with these social enterprise with the organization itself, they're trained on how to do these things, and actually how to be in touch with the marketplace, the community, with other organizations, and they actually see some of the values, and hopefully over time there's structural changes, and so there's actually efficiencies that would not have happened without understanding that the bad word in nonprofits is business practices.
Well, so you mentioned efficiencies. So what are the ethics of efficiency in nonprofits?
Well, it's this is something that is pretty near and dear to my heart. I've had some exposure to organizations that almost deliberately veered away from efficiency. I've experienced nonprofits that were in their impact measurement techniques were using methods that they knew were inaccurate, that were inflating the numbers of program recipients by including volunteers, stuff like that. I've been involved with an organization that had a social enterprise going, a thrift store, and that not only was it, it was a potential income earner. It wasn't at that point, and that was sort of the rub with the people in this particular organization. But also, this is something their program recipients had needs as far as clothes and some of the plates and pans and stuff like that. And rather than putting in the effort to actually deal with this, the issue of this social enterprise, they let it go, and they're actually selling assets at this point to cover operating costs. And so essentially, I mean, I'm a firm believer that if it's the curse of knowledge. So if an organization and particular actors in the organization, especially the management and the board, if they're aware that there's more efficient ways of doing what they do, and they don't do it, then that's an unethical use of the resources that they've been given. And it seems like harsh language, but these, when I donate to my favorite charities, and when I work towards these to helping these social causes, it's because I believe in the people that are doing it. And if they are misusing my funds, then that's unethical. It may be something of a gray area, but it's pretty dark. It's kind of a dark gray, if you ask me.
Absolutely. I mean, just like you said, if they have the knowledge and they're not really using it, so like you said, ignore it, that truly seems like, well, they're not even trying to be better or go to the next level or serve their mission to its full potential. And I can see how you can call that unethical. And just recently I had a conversation with an officer at United Way. And one of the points that arose was nonprofits are just not changing with the times. Yes, there were ways we did things before, and they're sort of taking that, put their head in the sand. This is the way we've always done it. Don't look into the future, but doing things they have always done them is not working nowadays. So previous guests even identified that statement as one a leader should never say. So we often talk about keeping abreast of trends in your industry to stay current and know what your competitors are doing. So how does that fit into our conversation today?
Well, it's I think that the contraction of resources that we saw in the social sector through the most recent recession, there is some good that's coming out of that. And what it is that because the resources are becoming more scarce and there's more nonprofits coming online every day, then the organizations that are operating within this scarce environment, they have to pay attention, and the landscape is always shifting. And, this tendency in organizations to isolate and to create a fiefdom, to have this fiefdom of like, this is what we do, this is who we are, and to work towards sustaining the organization rather than achieving the mission, right? As we talked about earlier, like the true mission of a nonprofit is to work themselves out of a job. And that's actually scary to some executive directors. If I do my job so well, then there's not going to be any homeless in Gainesville, and then I'm going to have to go find another job, And so, staying in touch with what's going on in the community today is a necessity. Like there are organizations that are failing all the time, and like I said, the one that was that I had some experience with that actually closed their social enterprise. They're contracting their budget year over year. The past few years have not been good to them, whereas most of the rest of the sector is on the rise, especially with the size of budget that they have. And so just to harp again on this communication piece and getting out into the community and doing primary research on knowing who's in the market, who's in the community, how well are we doing, can we do it better, how can we help? And continually asking questions like that is just, to me, it's vital.
Yes. I think you were put in some of your documents to me, remain teachable. And that's key. You have to be open and don't feel that you're the end all, but you're just one cog in the big wheel of how things should work. Wow.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Well, this has just been. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Patrick.
I was going to say one of my favorite quotes is from Jack Welch. An organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. So, that remaining teachable, the ability to learn and to actually continually stay focused on the entire landscape, the internal environment, all of those strengths and weaknesses, the external environment, what are the opportunities, what are the threats, what's the competitive landscape look like, who's out there, operating in the community, doing the same stuff to the same service recipients, and paying attention to that and using that to the advantage is the ultimate competitive advantage, or the ultimate ideal to strive for in achieving the mission of a nonprofit. I guess is the way to put it. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely. No. We want to hear as much as we can from you, and this has been great. It's been a tremendous conversation and a lot of information, and I want to thank you for being on the show today, Patrick. And if anybody wants to learn more about your work or work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I would encourage everybody to look at our website. It's socialenterpriseventures.com. There's information on all of the social enterprise training there, what we do, who we are, our various senior consultants across the country. And also my contact information is on there, but you can always email me at patrick@phibbardconsulting.com. And, of course, you can check out my personal website at phibbardconsulting.com. That's Hibbard. It's like Hubbard, but with an I.
Hibbard, yes, absolutely. And also, just to throw a plug in there, we, the Philantrepreneur Foundation, is going to be bringing the social enterprise training road trip, a road to sustainability, to the Las Vegas area in the fall. We're working on it now, so we'll have more information, but there will be a 2-day conference or training here in Las Vegas on the whole social enterprise business planning process. Patrick will be there, and Jean will be there, and I will be there. I'm excited about that.
I'm very excited.
Wait to be able to announce that for that. Thank you so much for this interview. Always remember, if you want the book, Nonprofit Guide to Social Enterprise, Show Me the Unrestricted Money by Jean Block, the Philantrepreneur Foundation bookstore at www.thephilantrepreneur.com. Purchase goes to Foundation. If you, a philantrepreneur with a story to tell, do you have tips, strategies, or insight for today's entrepreneurs and nonprofits? Then you need to be a guest on our show. Again, everything can be found on our website. Just look for the radio show tab and submit the guest inquiry form. While there, enjoy the archive of all of our past shows. Speaking of guests, excited to have you tune in next time, February 18th, as we welcome Helen Kaufman, partner at Advise Media Group. I think you'll enjoy his perspective as a former teacher. That's why I love him. Entering the business world and now aiming to give back. You'll also pick up some great tips on internet marketing and advertising, and that we both for entrepreneurs and nonprofits. This is Victoria Boyd and Heidi Anderson saying thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for tuning in to the Philantrepreneur Radio Show, hosted by Dr. Victoria Boyd. Get involved. Follow us on Facebook and other social media outlets. If you wish to share comments or suggestions or appear as a guest on our show, visit www.thephilantrepreneur.com. Contact Victoria Boyd. Email her at theboyd@thephilantrepreneur.com. The Philantrepreneur Radio Show is a production of and sponsored by the Philantrepreneur Foundation, a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.